If timber's hitting the ground, you bet two brothers are around.
You betcha. Hey guys, it's Rick with Two Brothers Outdoors again. Well, we're back. This is going to be part 2 of sawing lumber, making lumber out of trees. For the guys that just got mills or want to know the basics of sawing, in case you're thinking about getting a mill. So, we're going to try to get up in the woods today. We got log arches. Hang on just a minute and I'll show you that. Okay, so that's a log arch. We use those to pick logs up in the woods and bring them out. We run the four-wheelers up to do that, and what it does, it keeps the logs clean so your blades don't get dull real fast. If you hit dirt with these band mill blades, they get dull very, very fast. If you haven't got a debarker, then you best keep the logs clean. And the problem is we don't know if we're going to be able to get up there. If you a couple weeks ago we had rain, and underneath all this snow there's ice, so I don't know if we're going to be able to get traction or not. So if it happens that we can't get up there and get traction, we have some hemlock logs over here buried in the snow. We can dig one of those out to complete the video. They're probably frozen because they've been down. We dropped them in the fall and we've had frigid temperatures. We've had temperatures that's been below zero a lot this winter. So they're going to be frozen. I don't like sawing frozen logs. It's rough on the equipment. But if we have to, we will. Alright, so we're waiting on Tim. He's hooking up his log arch and he'll be over in a minute. And we'll get up in the woods and see what we can do. So Tim's made it over here with the log arch. I was thinking that maybe we should just take one arch up at first to make sure. I don't want to have both arches stuck back there for the rest of the winter.
I do.
I know you do.
I'll break the tracks. I'm game.
Well,
I'm not scared.
Take it up and see how it does with one log. If it's okay, then we'll bring them both up.
Sure.
If we get it stuck and have to unhook it and leave it for a couple weeks, at least we have one down here. Alright, we're going to head up. Like I said, we've got ice underneath all this snow and could cause a problem. We're going to give it a try. Are you ready?
Oh, we could put two horses in front of one log arch and run out my tether, hook it to your horse, and then we have two horses pulling a log arch.
We could. Actually, if we had a horse, a draft horse, this wouldn't be a problem. Sometimes the old days were better.
I'm sorry, these babies have been.
All right, let's go. Funny story. Up the top of the mountain there, about a half mile from here, we have our tree stands at the top of our property. We've been coyote hunting all year, and we haven't seen a single coyote. We got them on camera before the season started. Last night, we dropped this tree. Tim's like, hey, I hear something in the snow. I said, well, it's probably a couple of deer. We get down the trail here about 200 yards. Pair of coyote tracks running down our four-wheeler tracks all the way up behind the house.
Well, they weren't together at first. They like one came from one way, one came from the other.
And then they come together on the tracks, probably a breeding pair, right behind the house. I mean, within sight of the houses. If we were at home, we would have saw them. And then back behind Tim's house and back in the woods. Stinking coyotes. Smart little bastards, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they are.
All right, so we were lucky enough to get the log arch up here. And we're going to get this log up in the arch, and if we can get it out, then we'll bring both arches up. By moving this log, we'll be able to go around this knob and come down this hill, which will make it easier. We don't have to back it up. We did have a little problem backing it up. Got a mind of its own in snow. All right, we're going to get this loaded up and get it down to the mill. Okay, we're all loaded up. We're going to be heading down to the mill with the first log. These log arches, I tell you, we built them. They are the way to get logs out of the woods. All right, we're heading down to the mill, and then we'll be back up to get the rest. I'll tell you what, we've got tractors and all kinds of stuff. These four-wheelers have turned out to be one of the most useful tools that we have. You wouldn't believe some of the size of the logs We pulled out of here with these things. All right, we got 3 left. We've been pulling everything out with Tim's arch. His isn't quite as big as mine, but now we're getting to man-sized logs, so we're going to need a man-size
log.
man-size arch. All right, guys, we're down to 3 logs. Okay, guys, so Tim went over to drop off his log arch. He'll be back in just a minute. First thing I'd like to point out, if you just bought a sawmill, follow your manufacturer's guidelines for setting the mill up. This track has got to be level. It's got to be level, it's got to be straight. If it's not level and it's not straight, you will not cut an accurate piece of wood. All right, so we got the logs. We're going to saw one for you. First thing you want to do is make sure your knees are up on your mill. Every mill has them. They might be different than these. But when you roll the log onto the mill, you want to make sure it's not going to roll off the back. And that's what these do, is they stop it. All right, let's get the log set up. Okay, so when you put a log on the mill, you want to have the small end facing the saw head. And the reason you want the small end facing the saw head is those saw blades are kind of like fat, lazy old men. They take the path of least resistance. They're not stiff enough, even with tension on them, to not take the path of least resistance. So when tree limbs grow off a tree, they grow towards the sun, they grow at an angle. If you turn the log backwards, that blade's going to go up over the knot and then back. If you got the knot facing towards the mill, it'll go through it without going up. Okay, so you want the small end, if possible, towards the saw head. Okay, so when you put the log on the mill, every log has a sweet spot. As you roll the log onto the mill, you'll find the sweet spot easy enough. It'll just kind of like settle right in. You'll feel it. That's it right there. I can tell the log just kind of like settled right in. All right, so we're ready to dog it down and make our first cut. Okay, so when you start sawing, if you're sawing for flat boards and you're trying to get the very best lumber you can, the center of the tree right here is called the pith. You want to keep that out of your flat boards. Now today we're going to be sawing 2x4s. This has got a good solid pith on it and we're not worried about it. But if you go to Home Depot and buy 2x4s, you'll notice that the rings on the end of the 2x4s, and a lot of them will even have the center of the tree. And the purpose of that is up here is where they take their flat boards, because they're clear. And clear lumber, clear flat boards are worth a lot more than 2x4s and 2x6s. Then when they get their flat boards off the outside, then they cut the center into 2x4s and 2x6s for building.
So I got a question. What does clear board mean?
Clear board means that there's no knots, or knots less than 1/4 inch.
Okay.
A clear board, 1 inch thick, will bring $5 a linear foot. Where a 2x4, well, it used to be you get a 2x4 for $2. Now they're not like 25. But anyway, yeah, that's your most expensive lumber. So if you're cutting flat boards, you want it from the outside edges, all the way down till you get close to the pith. Also explaining the pith, one side of the log is smaller than the other. So when you're cutting flat boards, you'll want a toe board that'll raise this end of the log so the pith is the exact same amount off the carriage or the track as the other side is. That's so the pith runs straight through the log. But today, like I said, we're cutting 2x4s. We're not worried about it. We're trying to get the most 2x4s out of this log that we can. Now this log is 72 board feet. 2x4 is 5.3 board feet. This is 72 board feet in the log. 2x4 is 5.3 board feet. So we should be able to get 13 or so out of it. But we're going to cut them 1.5 inches. We're going to cut them dimensional. So we should be getting more than 12 or 13 out of it. Okay, so let's get set up and start sawing. Okay, so our first cut, this end of the log is bigger than this end of the log, which we've already pointed out. So we're going to start just under the surface of the bark on this side. And we're going to have our scale right here. I can't see it. Going to have our scale on 4/4. The first couple of boards that come off of here are going to be 1 inch thick. All right, we're going to make our first cut. This is the part that gets exciting. Okay, so we've opened up the log, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one more cut at 1 inch. So we're going to drop the scale here, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it with the light the way it is. So I'm going to drop it down to the next 4/4, but I'm going to go below it and come back up. And the purpose of that is it takes all the tension out of these cables. If you just go down to the 4/4, these cables may have not the same tension on either side. You're going to end up with a board that's not straight. All right, so now we're going to make our next cut 1 inch. Okay, so we've made our first cut, 2 cuts. I'm at the width I want to be right here on the small end. So now we're going to roll the log. Now, it's faster to cut dimensional lumber by rolling the log and putting the face that you just made against the knees. But there's a trick to that. Okay, so if you're going to cut it this way, this is the fastest way to cut dimensional lumber. But when you roll the face of your log up against the knee, you got to make sure there's no gaps. You got to make sure the log is square against the knee. Now down on this end, if you look, it's touching here, but not touching here. And that's not acceptable because that's going to make diamond edged wood, which means the wood is not going to be straight. So we got to try to redo this. If we can't get it square, then we will roll the log over and put the flat face down on the track. Okay, so we're square against the knee on this one. We're square against the knee on this one. But if we could not get it square against the knees, then you roll the log over this way, put the flat part down, and you let gravity hold it straight for you. Alright, so we're good. We're going to make a couple cuts here. We're going to try to get it even with this right here. Cutting 1 inch thick boards till we get to that point. Okay, so we made 3 cuts to get that square. And on the other end, there's going to be just a little bit of wane right here on this corner. They actually call that's bark, but we call it wane in the sawmill world. So if you hear the word wane, you know what it is. Okay, so we're going to roll it again, and this time it's going to be nice when we roll it because we're going to have a flat edge down, so we don't have to worry about getting it squared up. All right, here we go. We're going to roll it. Boom.
Try not doing that.
All right, so now we can put the knees down. We got these little stops right here, that the cant will sit against. Once you get it squared up, it's called a cant. It's no longer a log. And we're going to continue to saw. And now we don't have to dog it down because the weight of it will hold it in place, which makes it very easy. All right, so we're going to make more cuts until we get to this point or close to it. What we're trying to do is square this up. Okay, so this is coming along nicely. Remember to stand your knees up before you roll the log if you're turning the log by hand. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the, well, cant log, whatever you want to call it at this point. Still got bark on it. But you're going to end up over here with it, and then you're going to have a mess. Oops. He likes to fram them things around there. He's a bull.
Oh, got away from me.
All right, so we're almost to the point where we're going to start sawing 2x4s. Now, if you notice, we've been cutting these off right here, 1 inch thick. As we're bringing it down, we will make 1 inch thick boards out of these, and we'll show you how to do that too when we're done with this. Okay, so we got one more cut to make before we get to where we're going to be cutting for the 2x4s. And what we're going to do is we're going to come up here on this scale. We got an 1/8 inch kerf on our blade. So what we're thinking is how many 2x4s that we can get out of the log 4 inches thick. So the first 4 inch tier is going to be 4 1/8. The second is 8 1/4, and then the next one would be 12 3/8. So when we get done cutting this, we don't want to go any further down. We want to leave 12 3/8 from the bottom to wherever our last cut is. And I'll show you why when we get that point. Okay, so we're at 12 3/8, and unfortunately the log wasn't as round as we thought in the center. So we got quite a bit of wane. So we're going to lose a couple 2x4s out of that, but it's still not bad. Alright, so we're going to get this set up to start sawing the 2x4s. Just hang tight for a few minutes while we get everything set up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make our first cut on the scale up there at 8 1/4, which will give me 4 inches from the top. Then the next one's going to be 4 1/8, which will be 4 inches down from that. And that will give us, I'm going to go, yeah, now I got myself confused. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down 4 inches from here, cut, and then 4 inches again, cut again. And that should give us 4 inch, 4 inch, 4 inch. We've allowed for the saw kerf by going 12 3/8 of an inch thick, or, you know, this way. Alright, so we're going to cut it, and we'll show you how we're going to make 2x4s. Okay, so here's what we did. We went to 4 inches on the scale. Didn't make the cut, but we made 4 inches on the scale, went up to 4 1/8, and then we made our first cut. Now this is 4 inches from here to here. Then we went down to the 4 inch mark on the scale, cut again. Now it's 4 inches from here to here. And this is 4 inches from here to here. So we ended up with 3 pieces 4 inches wide, thick, wide, thick, thick. All right, so now we're going to take this and we're going to roll it over and stand it up. Okay, so we roll the whole thing over. So now our cuts that we just made are vertical instead of horizontal. Now we did dog this down on the bottom very lightly because we actually have 3 4-inch thick pieces of wood standing up against each other, and the only thing they're against is those little stops down there. So you want to make sure they stay together when you're cutting them. Alright, so here's where the magic begins. This is where the 2x4s start rolling off.
Them all at one time and not even moving, right?
Right, we're hoping to cut them all at once and not move them at all until we're done. Now we're going to have to make our first cut on the scale at 6/4. And we're going to go 6/4 all the way down because we're making them 1.5 inches thick. And this scale right here, if your mill has this type of scale, your mill manufacturer and the instructions will explain to you how to use it. But if you go from 4 to 4 to 4 to 4 to 4, every cut's going to be inch thick. If you go 5 to 5 to 5 to 5, every cut's going to be 1.25 inches. 6, 6, 6 is 1.5 inches. 8, 8, 8, and that's going to be 2 inches thick. And then this right here scale, that's actually how far your blade is from the cross pieces that the log sits on deck. All right, so we're going to start cutting these and making 2x4s.
Hey, come here a minute. Hold up. That don't look like a 2x4.
This right here,
No.
well, I put it on the first cut at 6/4, and then we'll go 6/4 from here, 6/4, 6/4, 6/4, 6/4. That way it'll be 6/4 all the way through. This first cut, we're just getting rid of some wing.
Okay. All right. I was confused. I thought you said 2x4s. All right. How come you don't have the guide close to the cant? Doesn't it make it kind of straighter?
Well, there's a reason for that.
What's that?
I'm lazy. Yes, that guide should be as close to the log or as close to the can as you can get it. I found on this saw it really doesn't make much of a difference. If I get into some real hardwood, I'll do that, but the softwood. But basically, I'm just lazy. I try to do things as fast as I can. You are correct. That should be closer to the can.
Okay.
And since we're doing a tutorial video, I should probably move that over so it's done correctly.
Okay.
You want to keep this guide as close to the log or as the can as possible when you're cutting. Thank you for pointing that out.
No problem. Good to know.
Okay, so we got this 2x4's got quite a bit of weight in it, so we won't count that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
What?
22 by 4s, but they are only an inch and a half thick, but they are 4 inches wide.
What?
But we got 22 by 4s out of that 72 board foot long.
But if a dimensional 2x4 is only 1.5 by 3.5, correct?
Correct.
So that's actually still bigger than a dimensional
2 by 4 that you buy at
Gotcha.
Home Depot.
Okay.
But for our project, inch and a half is going to be plenty thick enough, and like I said, we went 4 inches thick. Might have been able to squeeze another one out if we went.
Yeah.
But we're going to get a 2 by 2 out of that.
Yep.
So we'll do that.
Make something out of it.
All right, guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these boards here, and we're going to cut the wane off of them and make them actual 1 by whatever how wide we can get boards.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's get stacking on this other.
Okay, so now we're going to take those boards that we had the wane on, and we're going to make 1 by however wide we can get boards out of them, because we are not going to waste any of our lumber. Okay, so what we'll do is you take the straightest edge you got, set it down first on the bottom, and now we're going to square up the top. Now the boards that we need for our project, we need 6 foot long, 1 inch thick boards for the flooring. So some of these we will stop before we cut all the wane off of them, because we only need them 6 foot long. Okay, so you stand your knees up below the bark, both sides, and then you dog them down so that once again you're square against the knees. You want to make sure you're square against the knees. You don't want a diamond piece of wood. Somebody learned that the hard way.
Who? What was that?
What do you got? You an owl? Your feet fit a limb? Okay, so we're going to make these into boards. Okay, so that we know where to start our saw. 6 foot long is right about here, so I'm going to measure it from here up. And below the wane will be 9 inches. So I'm going to make the first cut at 9 inches high.
Tell you what, guys, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But once again, this is supposed to be close to that, but it is not. So, shame on you.
Okay, so our first cut is made. This is way past the 6 foot mark, so we're good. We're going to flip those over and cut the wane off the other side. Okay, once again, going to measure up from here. 8 inches will get us below the wane, and we only have to go 6 feet, so we're going to be golden. We're going to end up with 1 by 8s. Okay guys, we ended up with 22 by 4s, 1 2 by 2, which we can use for a windowsill in the project we're doing, 2 1/2 inch thick by 4 inches wide, and then we ended up with 4 boards with actually hardly any weight on them at all.
1 by 6s?
No, these are 1 by 8s. And we got quite a bit of wood out of that one log.
I did.
Very happy with it. Okay, now you'll notice too, when we were sawing, you saw a spray coming off of that. That's the cooling fluid, the tank. Your mill will be set up with that also. I run a teaspoon of Dawn, a teaspoon of diesel fuel to each gallon of water. That's worked out best for me. The manufacturer, Hudson, suggests using not Dawn, Pine Sol and Dawn a teaspoon of each to each gallon. And they also suggest using washer fluid
During the winter.
During the winter time when things are freezing. I don't like the washer fluid when I'm doing pine because the pitch
Turns blue.
Oh yeah, the wood turns blue and the pitch sticks to the blade pretty bad. But with this solution here, it doesn't. So what I do is I'll take that tank off, clear the lines out, put the tank down in the cellar where it stays warm. You ain't got to worry about freezing.
Me, I'm lazy. I use the blue.
He uses the washer fluid. He doesn't take anything off.
Nope.
Okay guys, that concludes the video. I hope that you find it helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us on here, or we go by lumberjack56@yahoo.com. You can send us an email. We will get back to you. Any suggestions you have of things that you see that might be helpful to people just starting out with the sawmill business, feel free to add those comments in there. But please keep it positive. We don't like negativity on YouTube, and we just won't tolerate negativity. Positivity is what we want. We want people to come into this profession, and we want them to feel welcome when they come into it. All right, so give us a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell if you want notifications of our videos that will be coming up. And you can also catch up with us on Facebook page under Two Brothers Outdoors. All right, guys, until the next video, thanks for joining us. We're out of here.